Welcome, Xlanders. Turn that down a little bit. Oh, this way. Let's try this way. I need to get like a slightly bigger green screen, or like move it so that I'm not gonna. Oh, it's gonna bug me though. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another UPX World. It is me, Thank Me Later, here, streaming from beautiful Dallas, Texas today. Like most days, honestly. Welcome. Hey, Golden. Thanks for showing up. Zilla, love to see you here. Walk My Paws LLC. What up, brother? Sheriff Shack in the house. From the Romanian contingency, my brother Pure Rolex. Glad you're here. Galactus Buck, what up? Represent Board Uplanders Club. Let's go. So today we're doing another of the UPX World web3 Wednesday. Somebody's got to think of a clever name for it. This is the UPX World news. I cover some different things from around web3 that were shared with me. So, and hopefully that you like them. And then we'll talk about them. And then if you have comments or thoughts, then you can share them. Yeah. Pretty straightforward. Pretty easy concept. Let's see what we got today. So here we go. It is, I don't know why I put March 22nd. It is March 29th. Here are some things we're going to talk about. This one isn't necessarily Web3, but I did think it was interesting. Humanoid robots coming to warehouse. Just, in relationship to Xlanders and humanoid robots, AI. I think that all kind of counts for Web3. So anything related to those things we're going to include. Metaverse Fashion Week 2023 goes multi-platform in a push for interoperability. Very cool stuff. I'm a big fan of fashion in the metaverse. We will have our own Xlander fashion line for sure. I think that there is essentially digital equivalent of all major types of manufacturing, art, creativity, etc. I think we'll see presenting itself in Web3. Japan's metaverse ambitions, a virtual power play. This one is interesting because it doesn't necessarily go against OMA 3, and I think I'm probably gonna do a special Twitter space at some point on OMA 3s and some of these other Web3 collaborations. This new Japanese metaverse ambition is one of those. So it's actually it's an alliance of different Japanese brands in hopes to create standardization and kind of this national identity in Japan around the metaverse, which is cool. Hey, St. Lucy, thank you for the resub. If you haven't already liked and followed our channel, please do so. It helps us out a tremendous amount. And if you would like to subscribe, that would also help us. Then you don't get any ads, and we'll get some exclusive stuff as well. So thank you very much, St. Lucie. Appreciate it. Next, so this was a fun one. I think we're going to spend some time on this one because it actually touched on a couple things that I've kind of been saying all along, and I don't know, it was interesting. So Elon Musk bids farewell to the metaverse, which obviously, if you look at the rest of these headlines, the term metaverse still shows up quite a bit. But it's very much a dying word. Everybody's converting over to Web3. We'll talk about that when we get there. How Crypto Skeptic is making Web3's most anticipated game. This was really cool. It's called Wild Card, and these guys, the team behind it, are kind of gaming. They're definitely gaming innovators. There was a couple concepts that they brought up. Um, there was a couple concepts that they brought up in regards to audience engagement. So they were actually developing a game prior to Web3 that they're now trying to integrate in with Web3. So in a kind of a similar way, they're doing what we're doing as far as creating a game first and then like looking to potentially monetize or grow the NFT space or Web3 connections. However, I do think that they're still off a little bit, and we'll talk about that. But I do think that their audience engagement and the way that they view games in this world of like Twitch streaming and stuff like that is actually really interesting. There's some good pieces there. Hathora raises 7.6 million to democratize multiplayer game development. This is a super cool project. I mean, it's not necessarily hardcore Web3, but I think it definitely can impact Web3 and certainly is something as UPX World is interesting to me as somebody who's creating a gaming company. The multiplayer aspect is something that is very tricky. There's a lot of technical components to it. Even with cloud compute and scalability, it's still there's a lot of tricky components to manage. And Hathora essentially offers it as a service. Now, that is definitely not the only place that does that. Unity actually has built-in multiplayer options as well. But Hathora is an up-and-coming one that we're definitely taking a look at. Virtual malls give merchants low-cost ways to reach consumers. This is interesting to me for a couple of reasons. One, true story, I actually used to I was the manager at an EB Games inside of my local mall for quite some time. And right across which was funny because at the time it was owned by GameStop. It had already been acquired by GameStop. And in that mall, actually one of my now lifelong friends, shout out Yuri. He doesn't ever watch this, but my boy Yuri, he actually ran the GameStop in the mall. We could see each other from the stores. And like whenever there was like a midnight release for like Madden or one of the things, like we would always compete over like who had which was funny because we both had the same boss because we both worked for the same company. It was just really fun. Anyway, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then as we're going through, if there's questions, thoughts, comments, feel free to leave them here. If it's afterwards, feel free to, put it on Discord or even DM me. Happy to have discussions. And if there's other things that you would like to see or talk about, definitely let me know. So, I did these slides, but really, we don't really care about the slides. I'll just pull up. Sorry. Rule 1 of doing a stream, turn off your phone, You know what? I'm actually going to share the articles so you guys can see it. Let me see here. Can I blow this up? Make it bigger? All right. So I just thought this was interesting because first of all, tell me that doesn't look like an Xlander. I mean, to be fair, there's not too many ways that you can create a robot, a humanoid looking robot without it looking more or less the same. I mean, the joints and the hands, like it all kind of goes in the same place. I mean, the head and I guess probably the chest cavity are probably the biggest opportunities because outside of that, when you think of like, not to get super nerdy, but like the limbic system, you're you're probably putting a lot of components in there that you don't want to see. So outside of like stylizing the outside of it, which again, if you're going to be creating mass produced factory robots, I mean, don't get me wrong, robots with tattoos would be super dope. I don't know why that doesn't exist. I can tell you now, yeah, let's get some tattoos for our robots. I think that'd be dope. Um, and also, well, I guess I guess they're not humanoid ass. They look super weird. But I think the reason that this is important is I do think in the upcoming, when we start talking about, and this will definitely come up more in a later article, when we start talking about what does the digital future look like and why is web3 and things like decentralization of revenue streams and global redistribution of wealth so important. It's because when we look at the jobs getting replaced by not just AI, but then these multifunctional robots, like that is incredibly important. So anyway, here's the person. If you work at a Amazon factory or warehouse, which is actually a lot of people, and it's already significantly automated, right? If you've ever, I actually have a buddy back in Ohio who works as a robot repair technician in an Amazon factory. So all those giant industrial robots, if they break down, you need essentially robot mechanics to fix them, and he does that. So we'll see a rise in those jobs, but it's definitely not going to be nearly as many as get replaced by robots, and those jobs are going to be skilled manual labor. So if you are a skilled manual laborist, then that's probably a good thing for you. All right, let's start talking about some fun stuff. Here, Fashion Week. Some big brands participating. I honestly think if I was running a brand, there's no reason to not participate in some of these things. They're probably incentivized. When you think about brands like Dolce & Gabbana and Coach, and I mean, really any fashion brand, a lot of their cost, materials and advertising and designers, things like that, creating virtually, if you think about it, a lot of these designers are probably creating virtually anyway already, right? They're probably creating a lot of these designs virtually first, and they might create some designs that virtually work, but then maybe they try them out with the fabrics or the actual patterns and they don't work. So for me, I go, this is super cool, because I think that there is a huge opportunity for fashion in Web3. Now, specifically here, they are working with Decentraland, and then actually the other one that caught my eye was Spatial. I believe this is also in Spatial, and then another one. Decentraland is interesting in the sense that it's still kicking, like it's still getting traction. Decentraland and Sandbox are the two that are still kind of like chugging along, but it doesn't feel exciting anymore. And you can see even here, they are trying to expand out not just their brands, but here, okay, Decentraland. So last year, they did it exclusively in Decentraland. So this is a big difference. Now, you probably recognize Spatial, as Spatial is one of these kind of like free stand up your own digital Sims kind of thing. So that's kind of interesting to see. And then this other thing called Over, which is is augmented reality. Now, they're trying to like multi-stream. And again, from a fashion brand perspective, I mean, you look at these, these are known brands. You also have some new digital ones. I like Dress X. Hey, what up, Dress X? Let's go. Raises 15 million. Let's go. So I expect one day we'll have Xlander fashion part of that. That'd be super cool. But the reality is there isn't any really cross-platform cutover. Now, what I am surprised is that they didn't collaborate with Player One. What's the one that Upland's avatar? Why did I just space on that avatar? And Spatial uses it. So to me, it seems like a missed opportunity to not partner with Ready Player Me. Thank you, Ready Player Me. To me, I think it's a missed opportunity for these fashion brands. This is where I would have been playing if I was them. Ready Player Me, because it's what they talk about is like they wanted this interoperability, but these platforms over Spatial and Decentraland, they don't talk to each other or work together. But a decentralized avatar platform like Ready Player Me, to me, makes the most sense, especially because I already know that it's supported in Spatial. If I'm Decentraland, there's no reason I'm not supporting it there. It's supported in the really good metaverses like Upland. But overall, no interoperability. So again, this is definitely something that is not just an issue in the web3 space or in these new digital metaverses. This is something that's been an ongoing problem with it's very similar to the walled garden issue, right? So when you look at Decentraland or Spatial, like they're working to integrate in more with others, but they don't want to integrate in with competitors necessarily. Now you might say, well, but then TML, what about like OMA 3? Everybody's holding hands and singing Kumbaya. OMA 3 would be like the UN in the sense that all the countries are coming together and like, okay, well, we're, cruel and unusual torture, so like, what are we not going to do? But at the end of the day, United States and China and Japan, like they're all part of the United Nations, sure. And there's some things that they decide on globally, like, hey, these are things that we're not going to do, or here's how we standardize this. But you think that the world's going to standardize on a language? No, definitely not. You think that the globe is going to standardize on a currency? No, definitely not. So I do think that having kind of layer 2 creations that allow the usage of that, which to me, it's kind of like, I would say layer 2 is kind of like Vegas in a sense, right? So if you think of the world, the diversity that's in the world, right? So you could go and visit France and see the Eiffel Tower. You could go visit New York and see the Statue of Liberty. You could go to all these different places and try all their food, and you would get like the most genuine and authentic experience from those places. However, if you wanted to just kind of experience it in a light, fun way that you could experience all of it in a weekend, you're going to go to Vegas, and then you're going to hit the international buffet, and you're going to hit, the little Italy. Like, so when I look at it as like, okay, you have this world of deep experiences. You can go into Upland and really dive deep. You could go into Wax and really dive deep into those NFTs. But if you just kind of want to have fun and dabble and eat at the buffet, go to a layer 2 and try a little bit of everything and see what works for you. And then maybe from that, you're like, man, I want to see the real Eiffel Tower now. Okay, well, now you know where you want to play. So I kind of look at it like that. And also for something like, these brands, I really don't think that they are approaching the Web3 space correctly. Hey, St. Lucie, let's see here. St. Lucie says, I picked up a really cool Nike hoodie that's AR, VR, and soon available on Ready Player Me. Super cool angel wings pop out. Plus, it's a unique NFT that comes with a real hoodie and QR recognizer for camera apps. What? That's super freaking cool. That's the right way to do that. But it is, and honestly, it isn't. So here's the thing. Let's be real. Everybody's stuck in the same paradigm mind. Sell a virtual good, own a virtual good. That is, I saw your wings. Awesome. Sell a virtual good, get a virtual good, then sell and trade those virtual goods. Okay. I just think that that's wrong. I think the way that Nike should do it is make 50 of those. And you can still do that. Here's the thing is, they can still do exactly what they're doing now. So maybe it's an and. So maybe a better way to say this is an and. Also, internet, how old do you think I am? Really? Come on. Y'all are killing me. No. Oh, wait. No, I'm not going to even feel. Jeez, old Pete's. Anyway. Sorry. You use them for gaming one time and you get put on a list. That's all I'm saying. Don't do it. No. Snapchat Insta will see the wings. So I think it's probably an and statement because St. Lucie, would you mind sharing, if you don't mind, like how much did that cost you? I mean, that sounds super cool. And given that there's a physical item involved and it was probably very limited, because here's the thing, it's one of two things. It's either limited and you either got it at a good price and then there's a ton of upside on the secondary market. It's mass produced, which means that it's cheaper initially, but then the secondary value is essentially nothing. Or they pre-marked it up and made it limited, so it was already super expensive, which means that your secondary upside is there, but it's going to be an expensive sell. Because again, for me, $150. So I mean, Alexa, how much is a Nike sweater? That's
recently on Amazon.
Okay, here you go.
The price for Nike sweater ranged from $35 up to $85. The first one is Nike men's pullover fleece club hoodie as one.
They look really good. So, okay, all right, thank you. Alexa, stop. So, what I just learned from Alexa, an average Nike sweater can be bought for $35 to $85, limited to 500 prints. So, you're paying a significant upcharge right off the bat for this physical item. Plus, your virtual item now, while super cool, it's kind of like when Upland does the pay $20 for an Explorer and 20,000 UPX, right? Like right off the bat, you get the 20,000 UPX, and now you have this other virtual thing that you can sell. But in my mind, as a Block Explorer connoisseur, I go, you got that Block Explorer for free. So now in this scenario, I go, you paid essentially $100 for the virtual piece of it. In my mind, you probably paid $50 for the actual physical sweater. And then the other $100 would have been just profit for Nike, because the sweater doesn't cost anything more for them. So they see the value, right? They've taken a $35 to $85 purchase. they've added a negligible cost to create a digital piece and integrate it in. And now they're able to make, 500 times 150 grand profit on top of whatever. Like, I mean, a $50 sweater, no offense to Nike, but like, let's be honest, that's being made for pennies in a sweatshop. So all they did was just skyrocket their profits on that item. Not to take anything away from it, by the way, because it's still a sweet ass item. It's still super cool. It's still super collectible. Like, so props to St. Lucie. I'm actually super jealous. That is really cool. But what I'm saying is that we haven't shifted the paradigm from greedy corporations continuing to be greedy. What I would like to see is it can still be the same dynamic, right? Nothing has to change there. But what I'm saying is that then they need to offer that in some other place as an in-app purchase for like, I don't know, 20 cents. But in that purchase, it's not an NFT. It's not tradable. It doesn't dilute the market. And that 20 cents gets split up among the sweater holders, right? So now you have a reason to continue to collect the original. You can still show off that you have the original digitally, just the way you always have. And now the people who don't want to go and pay $1,000 or whatever the secondary market is can pay a very small amount to have the joy of having the look of that avatar. And guess what? Here's the paradigm shift. If Nike just did that, if Nike just made it so that, hey, you can own the NFT and here's the original, and maybe there's like an authentic check mark, like when you're wearing it in the game, if somebody inspects you, it's like, ooh, this is an authentic one. This is like a real deal, versus somebody who just bought it as an in-app purchase, like, and so it's just like grayed out. But Nike took 100% of the profits of all in-app purchases. I would imagine that the 500 people who bought it would feel a little slighted. Like, they would still probably buy it. There would still be a collectible market for it, but it would be significantly less. Because the reality is, then why would I pay $1,000 for one with a check mark? Now, granted, there are people that will, no doubt, but there's no reason to, for an average gamer or player, if I just want the aesthetics of the wings or whatever the hoodie gets me, and I could pay for it as an in-app purchase for a fraction, that's what I'm going to do, because I just want the cool aesthetic. But if we go, hey, companies, don't be greedy, reward your loyal customers who paid $150 for a $5 sweater and a 20 cent NFT, like, reward them now with passive income against that. So now what you've done is not only have you empowered and really galvanized, that's the word I wanted. You've galvanized your fan base. The people that own those are now so excited, and they're going to go out and promote the heck out of it. Because if you know that you get a fraction of a penny for every person who buys it, you're going to wear it everywhere and be like, bro, you got to get this. You ain't cool unless you got these wings. Like, because you're making money. You become a promoter for Nike. Like, the money that they would have made from just being greedy and taking those in-app purchases will pay over way more, in my opinion, long-term, in customer loyalty and brand awareness and influencer status. Like, because you're now empowering your consumers to make money. That's the paradigm shift that no one has tapped into yet. And that's exactly where UPX World's coming to play. Let's see here. Drifter says, a good business idea would be a 3D scanning service. Once all these businesses start placing their products in the metaverse, they will need somewhere to scan their products. Yeah. So Drifter, that's not a bad idea. And in fact, Pure Rolex and crew are working on all kinds of cool stuff in Romania, which is awesome. 3D scanners are super cheap now. If you're like in the States or anywhere, you can get them on Amazon. And all major clothing companies and things like that have virtual mock-ups of all of their merchandise already. So like that's not really an issue because almost all like product design is done virtually first. And then even like done like, if it's, a physical thing like 3D prototyping or things like that. So for the most part, I would say that's already there because they're using it. What up, Cam Hen Creations? Welcome to the stream, brother. Thank you for tuning in. More cheese, God of pixels. I don't make jingles, Cheese, but that was the best I could do because I do know that you sing in addition to all of your other amazing talents. Thank you for tuning in. Ba-da-da. It's just, let's see. It's just as much for your social app recognition. You're featured every time in your pick. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad I could bring you a little bit of positivity today. I hear that, Cheese. Everybody can use a little bit of extra positivity. Yeah. So again, I think a lot of these companies, Drifter, are already have their virtual products. They just don't know how to integrate them in yet with the space. So I'm keeping an eye on definitely on things like this, the virtual, because Dolce and Coach, Tommy Hilfiger, like they're all like designing clothing products that can then also secondary into virtual worlds. Dedicated places like DressX, like once you realize like there's no limitations on fabric, like the most expensive fabric, or like again, if it looks good but it feels uncomfortable, guess what? Virtually, it doesn't matter. Like that itchy wool sweater, if it looks cool, you can make it. You can make it that it's like glowing, like the limitations of physical don't apply. Like you can have LEDs and like weird stuff in it, and you don't have to worry about it if it's comfortable. How are you going to power it? So you can have it like move. Like you could have a full wool sweater that looks like an ugly Christmas sweater with a full animated like Christmas scene on it. Like that looks like wool being animated, like a stop motion picture on the shirt. There's no limitations except for your imagination or your skill. And guess what? I know our community and and they have the skill and plays music. Zilla, do you remember they used to sell? I swear to you, because my mom would tell them they sold these little buttons. They're like not like buttons like a button, like a push button, and they were like metallic. They had like a silver top, and you would press it and it would play a song, usually like a holiday song or something. And then people would sew them into like sweaters. My mom would make these, and I had like she made one with like the reindeer and like the puffy paint nose, and then you'd press it and it'd play some annoying song. Do you remember that? That was old school. And then they would get hidden around the house because then you'd like rip them out, and then they would like the battery would start to die. So then they would just like play randomly behind the couch for like years because you're like, where is this thing? Anyway, that was a squirrel moment. But all right, let's go because we got some big things. Oh no, that was me telling Amazon, please stop sending me samples of Depends. Please, that's not my wrong demographic, bro. Okay, so next we're going to talk about Japan's metaverse ambitions. So this was interesting. So this JMEZ, so it's essentially like OMA, and the way, I'm sure that there's a lot of differences. Full disclosure, I know that there's a ton of differences between OMA 3 and JMEZ. They're not really the same thing, but they are, in the sense that they are an alliance in the Web3 space, aimed at standardization and kind of furthering the agenda of their collective brands. That's probably the best way to say it. So this is really interesting. I love Japan in general, and the Japanese culture is very interesting. They have a lot of national pride. In fact, they talk about national pride a lot in this article. Do not ask me how you say Ryu Goku Ku. Like, this sounds like a made up Dragon Ball Z character. But here we are. To build their own open meta. So maybe Ryu Goku Ku is the equivalent of OMA 3. But you can see here the Japan Metaverse Economic Zone, JMEZ, looking to really put Japan in a very strong digital space. They've always been, kind of on, in my opinion, I don't know. I feel like they've always been on the cutting edge of technology in my mind. Like, they're very innovative and creative. The other thing is they have very like limited resources as far as land and like natural resources. So from an economic perspective, it makes sense that a country as innovative and tech heavy as Japan would be very interested in aligning kind of their brands from a national perspective and aligning and saying, hey, we need to all get together to make sure we're rowing in the same direction for this next phase. I think it's very heads up. And again, I know how driven and innovative Japan can be. And I'm really looking forward to this. I mean, if you just take a look at their presence in anime and how they view technology and anime and how they paint Japan in the future scape of the world, like, they're very future thinking. Like, in my opinion, this is really interesting. I don't necessarily see it compete with OMA 3 in that sense, but I do see it being part of like where we're going to see these kind of groups coming together to try and form larger collectives to drive, again, shared agendas is how I'll say that. I'm going to save this bids farewell for last because honestly, I have a lot to say about it. And if I start with there, I'm not going to get to these other ones. Wild card. So you can, and you know what, maybe I need to like post the links to all of these articles so that way you can read them all. That would probably make a lot of sense. But this was a really interesting fireside chat at South by Southwest with the creators of Wildcard, which is a game that they actually started a while ago. The way that they describe it is like hardcore, like what Pokemon should be, where it's like an arena battle and you summon monsters to fight each other. Really cool stuff. But what I want to talk about here is their perspective on gamers. So I should have highlighted it. The point being that they do not view, so normal gaming company goes, hey, we have a game. How do we get more people to download and play the game? What they were looking at is streaming is a big deal. So if one player is playing and there's 10,000 people watching, they actually consider all of those people, even the 10,000 people watching, as potential customers. Not in the sense that most game companies are like potential customers as in they need to download it, but as customers that already exist. They're already consuming their game. They just don't have it downloaded. But if they're receiving as much joy and entertainment and engagement as somebody who's paid the game and is playing it, and they're just watching it while they play, and he talks about his son who does it, like, what does that engagement model look like? They worked on this game He talks also was a really interesting piece on mobile. This is actually a great article. I definitely want to make sure you guys get this. And when he left working, I think they were working with like Microsoft and on the Halo. One was on Halo, and the other one was on Age of Empires. And so like these guys are like hardcore in the gaming scene. As soon as the first iPhone came out, they were like, this is it. We need to get to mobile. These are the guys who invented Words with Friends, stuff like, and sold that to Zanga for millions and millions of dollars. They know what they're doing. And they saw that. And the way he describes it is like, he now saw the potential of there is a Game Boy in everybody's pocket. Like, even his wife who doesn't play games. And so then you have to think about it differently of like, well, they're not going to want to play an Age of Empires game. They're not going to want to play Halo. What kind of games are they going to want to play? What kind of experiences are now going to be created for this new user base? And so he saw that same paradigm shift with like the MOBAs and the Twitch streaming. The first MOBA, it's not necessarily the first MOBA. What's the big one? Why did I just space on that stupid? I don't even like it. Not for, League of Legends here. League of Legends was created before the streaming stuff. And so like this just in general, this conversation was really interesting of like, it was created before streaming. Something like Fortnite, which was created with streaming in mind. So like the interface and the UI, the UX, the gameplay, all of that gets adjusted to be optimal for streaming. But they make a really interesting point that the game of Fortnite doesn't know or care if you're playing solo or you're a big streamer and you're playing with 100,000 people watching. It doesn't impact the game at all. Both players' experiences are exactly the same. Person who's playing alone in their apartment, and Dr. Disrespect who's streaming with 100,000 fans watching. So, and then they talk about, which we've seen is, again, we're going to see an ongoing theme here, which is highlighted on our last article, corporate greed, right? These streaming platforms siphon off most of the money. It is very, very difficult to make a living as a streamer. It's hard work. It is not easy. And if you actually talk to the streamers, for the most part, especially the ones at the top, it's work. It's not fun, because when you're streaming for 10 hours a day and having to manage your chat and keep up with your socials and be on, like, you can't be off during those things. Like, it's a lot. And so they don't make a lot of money for it. So then trying to this company was like, okay, well, how do we get maybe the audience participation? You get a little bit more. You see this with like things like bits and stuff. They try to do it, but most companies still aren't doing it very well. But that is really interesting to me, of how do we get audiences to engage? Definitely something that we're going to be exploring more with UPX World. I really like the idea that even if you're not actively playing UPX World, even if you're not actively playing Upland necessarily, if you're watching somebody stream it, how could you interact with them? What can you do? How does that benefit? How does the game change, right? Even something simple. So like, obviously the first thing I thought about was creating a virtual stadium. So if you're actually going to have a stadium, like, why not have the people that are actually watching it? Yeah, you can fill it out like they did during the pandemic with the little cardboard cutouts of people. Sure. But then maybe have them fill in with like real people. That could be interesting. Like, and not necessarily, I want to specify this though. I'm not saying that you have to create a digital avatar and you have to sit there and watch it through your avatar's eyes, right? Because that's a lot. Like that's a difficult viewing experience. I still want to be able to watch it on my phone. I still want to do that. But maybe when I log in and I'm watching it on stream, remember how, we already had a kind of an example of that. Remember we did the streamer things with the little Xlanders right at the bottom with all the names. Like we already were actually experimenting with that of how do you get audience engagement and making like almost like mini games that then can be played with the audience. I do think that there's a big opportunity here. I also really like the fact that we're seeing a classic AAA game that's now coming to Web3. Spoiler, they're still not doing it right, in my opinion. I think again, still opportunity. Hathora. So this, I did talk about this. This is just like kind of a techie nerd thing, but I do think it's important to call out like these are technologies that as UPX World, like that we are very interested in. AWS Lambda, if you talk to our boy Grum, I'm sure he'll tell you how imperative that service is to running the UPX World data mines. And so essentially this is a similar technology in a sense of how the infrastructure is based in the cloud and set globally. So when you're doing queries or when you're running these multi-player events, it actually stands up servers that are localized as best as it can to the players involved. So for instance, our friends in Romania, if they were all playing together, it would likely stand up the closest virtual server that they had in their network there in order to reduce latency and some of those other technical issues. All of this is incredibly important and detailed and technical to a multiplayer experience. And so having services like this and having companies that are pursuing making it easier for game developers to do that is going to be important in Web3 because multiplayer is critical in Web3. Multiplayer is critical in gaming right now in general. Like you cannot have a really successful game that's strictly single player. I'm not saying that you can't and shouldn't have a good single player experience because I do think that a lot of games are missing that. They really need to embrace a single player experience, but multiplayer is really where the money's at. People want that to be able to play with their friends, etc. So very cool. Virtual malls. So we kind of talked about this a little bit. Payment innovation. Honestly, not anything super interesting. I think most of what's covered. I want to get to this. So I actually did not realize this. So this tweet here, which is really interesting because I'm a fan of Disney in general. I mean, I think they're amazing. They actually closed their metaverse division. Which I did not realize. And Elon's like, nature is healing. So Elon is against the metaverse. Now, what's interesting is not this. This is happening across the sector. Is a lot of these metaverse gurus have now jumped ship to be AI, this AI renaissance, right? And it's fair to say that AI is going to impact our society significantly more than the metaverse was. I think that that's a fair statement. I don't think that a normal person would actually argue with that. Now, what I would say though is that if you look, and I said this from the get, Zuckerberg buries the metaverse. So this kind of like, I mean, it did not come as a surprise. It should not come as a surprise. All of these Web2 giants do not want the metaverse and really Web3 to proceed. They are stalling for AI. Now, hear me out on this. And this is why they're doing that. I know that this sounds crazy, but if you look at how AI would inevitably impact the society as a whole, what's going to happen is the replacement of all the jobs and all essentially how you can generate revenue, your ability to create businesses, your ability to create new revenue streams for yourselves is all of a sudden going to be almost entirely controlled by AI. There will need to be some sort of like universal income put in place because there'll be such mass like layoffs of just people just won't have jobs, right? Now, in that world, you become virtually, not entirely, but virtually locked into whatever like segment of society you're in. And all of a sudden, it becomes a much bigger divide too. And so I don't think it will be as quick or as dystopian as movies like The Hunger Games or Just in Time. Great freaking movie, by the way. Not just because I'm a huge Justin Timberlake fan, but also the idea of like having time as currency. But they have like those different areas, right? Well, for all of the rich people, they have enough money that they're set. Their kids are set. Their families are set. Even I would say, upper middle class. If your family, if you're, the primary breadwinner is an executive at a company, or you have maybe property holdings or other access to passive income, you probably will be okay for a generation or two. Everybody else, like, and I speak like my family, like my, I mean, my brother's a painter, so his job is pretty safe for a while, but his wife does interior decorating. Like that will be likely replaced by AI. She does it for like corporate places. They'll just be like, we want this aesthetic, and it'll just get designed. My other brother he works at a call center. That'll be replaced. And in fact, actually, his wife also works with the call center. So, like, those will just be replaced by AI. They'll be put on a set amount of money to be like, this is what you get to live. And the reality is, for most people, that actually will be fine for them. That'll give them more free time. Again, the upper level, the Zuckerbergs and honestly just the ultra rich are going to make it seem like it's a great thing for most of society. Hey, look, you don't have to worry about anything anymore. We're going to cover your living expenses, blah blah blah. But that idea of like the American dream, no offense to anybody else is around the world, the dream of being able to rise up beyond your station and achieve something will be a lot more difficult. I expect that things like lotteries and gambling will become a lot more prevalent. I would imagine also things like recreational sandwiches and things will just become more normal because people won't have anything to do all day. And so if Web3 is successful before that happens, though, now, especially depending on the architecture, you have decentralized ownership. You don't have this centralized control of the Web2 giants owning and maintaining everything. You now have core and key digital assets empowering communities and individuals and organizations at a global level. And that is super, super important. And so when I see things like, yep, Zuckerberg bought Meta and then literally tanked it and then goes, oh, by the way, we're not focusing on that anymore. We're creating a new Meta on generating AI. So like, they're like, yeah, no. We're on to AI because AI was always the goal. AI, they knew AI was going to be the goal. Now, I can actually appreciate from Musk's perspective, like he is actively against the metaverse. He thinks it's actually a plague. Now, it's interesting because he's used the plague, like he's a fan of the Web3 stuff when he wants to mess around with Doja Coin or Bitcoin and his stuff, and then like he'll like whatever, like just kind of he'll hate on it, right? But like that's part of the game for these guys, right? But we have to look at it differently. Like, we cannot just sit idly by while this goes on. Like, we have to go, wait, why are they doing that? These are smart people. If you think that Zuckerberg did the Meta purchase for anything less than he's thinking 3 steps ahead, like, you're missing it. You're missing what he did. You're missing the fact that the web 2 companies have all kind of got together, and oh, by the way, they have their own equivalent of OMA 2 or OMA 3, that is Microsoft, Sony, Facebook, Google, like all of them have come together and made their own. And spoiler, their whole idea is to essentially tank the area because they don't want it. They have something to gain, just like people go into nodes. There are a few that go in, they buy everything and control. They are also silent about, yeah. Oh, and they are super silent about their collaboration. Yeah, so it is unfortunate. However, we do have, again, there's still a window. Oh, where was it? There was a secondary article which was fascinating. There was an article. It was like after one of these that was, there's a group of people, like a bill that got passed around, and our boy even signed it himself, saying that they need to slow down AI. Oh man, what is that? I mean, I guess that'll help get rid of belly fat, a little nose candy. Anyway, there's another interesting article. I lost it. That is like not Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and a bunch of other people have said, like, hey, we cannot develop anything more powerful than ChatGPT 4 because we don't know the impact, and it could be actually really bad for society. That's actually happening. So if you're not paying attention to what's happening in the AI universe, big things are happening there. ChatGPT 4 has passed like 90%. It tested in the 90 percentile of like a bunch of things. It's passed all like the bar. It's crushing things. Like, and they're worried because they don't know how it's doing its stuff. AI is the whole thing. So anyway, all the Web 2 people were like, yep, okay, let's crush metaverse. We don't want that to happen. Now we're going to focus on AI, because once we spin up AI, we can actually start to essentially control everything else, because AI is going to be so powerful that it just replaces everything else. And the companies that control it and the individuals that control it are going to just control the wealth and knowledge and power globally. I know it sounds daunting, y'all. Trust me, I know. But it's up to us, like, not to be dramatic. Not that I'm not dramatic. But the reality is that if projects and companies like UPX World don't work to help decentralize something from a revenue stream perspective, to empower people to have a way to essentially bypass corporate structures, right? To bypass the corporate entities that are siphoning money from society to fill their own coffers, to say, hey, look, gamers, you are spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a month on games. Candy Crush, Fortnite, Clash of Clans, whatever it is, whatever your game of poison is. Stop doing that. Or it's not even stop doing that. It's, if we give you a better alternative, and there's yet to be a gamer, by the way, that I went, hey, if you had 2 games, say they were equally as fun, they had relatively the same graphics, they had the same player base. One, the in-app purchases went to a major corporation, EA, Blizzard, Square Enix, whatever it is. And another one you could actually track it to a team of awesome guys in Romania, some amazing digital artists from around the world. Some of the If you could track that when you bought this really cool picture of a vortex of bubble gum, that you knew that some of that was going to go to the god of pixels. When you put a print of this really cool existential love poster, that it was going to go to Sheriff Shack, or you coated one of your cars in an epic decal from the one and only Robzilla, that they were going to receive funds from that. Which game would you play? Which game would you willingly put money into if you had that choice? 100% of the time, they're going to go, well, yeah, obviously I'm going to pay to do the cool game that pays the people in the community and that empowers. Okay. So we know that the gaming demand is there. It's already there. People are spending billions of dollars a year on in-app purchases. The technology is there. Anybody can build these games. The games are actually they're not easy to build because we're building them from scratch. So we're not using reused digital assets. We're actually creating our own digital assets. And then all we need to do is then have the underlying NFT structure and the architecture. We have already structured that out. So we have the ability to now change that paradigm shift. And that is a massive disruption to a multi-billion-dollar gaming company. Now, let's take that and expand it, right? Clothing, art, real estate, all of those other digital assets. Now we can start looking at how do we help decentralize revenue streams of every digital commerce in the world? How do we then support outside of digital? So what happens when we create a clothing brand that makes sweat? Now, the difference is, and I've not ever really talked about this, that when you start to talk about how would you make like a physical brand from digital, that becomes more tricky, right? But the largest car company, the largest transportation company in the world doesn't own any cars, Uber. The largest retailer in the world doesn't really own many retail shops, Amazon. Like the largest food delivery doesn't own a delivery truck, Uber Eats and food. Like, so you can have these large companies that now also do decentralized, but again, they're still very greedy. The way that they treat their workers, like the way that they do stuff, there's still a lot of opportunity for us to then, once we've established this decentralization of revenue streams, leveraging blockchain and showing how that scales digitally, then we can start to have a conversation on how do we bring that into traditional manufacturing. We can leverage AI to reduce our overhead. We can leverage robots to do the physical labor and say creation. So creating a physical copy of one of these things, the cost could be drastically reduced, which means that, and with things like drop ship and stuff like that, you could have a virtual holding company with very little overhead that would then allow that passive revenue and profit to be shared among other creators and owners in that physical space. So while what we're talking about now is decentralization of revenue streams inside of the gaming industry, which is a multi-billion-dollar, industry, and would globally redistribute wealth in a very big way, that's just the beginning of what Web3 can really be. And that is what I want you guys to think about, is how, if all major companies were forced essentially to have some way of decentralizing some amount of their revenue streams strictly out of community demand and saying, we're not going to buy your products, we're not going to play your game, we're not going to buy your sweater, Nike, unless you empower the shared revenue model. So Nike, when you make that sweater, unless you offer a digital copy that can be bought at a fraction of the cost that revenue is shared among the digital holders, we're not going to buy your sweater. Obviously, people are still going to buy their sweater. But the idea is that once we get that momentum, we can start putting a lot of pressure on traditional businesses. And that is very scary to them. That's very scary to go, hey, we don't need to use Facebook or Twitter. What if we created our own social media platform that actually gave influencers the right amount of revenue based on the attention that they attract, and that we issue them proper, shares of the revenue that they help generate through the blockchain, so it's very obvious and it's very transparent and it's very decentralized. Hey, guess what? All of those revenue streams that these major companies enjoy, yeah, we're going to start cutting that down, because guess what? They're not going to hesitate. They are not going to hesitate to fire every single person that becomes obsolete once their AI and their robots takes over. I know that's a bit of a rant, but the reality is they aren't going to hesitate to cut every person's job that is not needed when it can be replaced by AI and robots, because it means more profits for them. They don't care about the employees. They don't care about their customers. They care about their stakeholders and their profit margins. So we have to get ahead of that. We, as a community, as a society, have to put pressures on these large corporations to say, that's not acceptable. That isn't the world we want to live in. We want to live in a world of much closer to equality. I don't think we'll ever get to a world of true equality. I think that that's a bit of a dream, but it sure as hell can be more equal than it is now. And that's what we strive for every day here at UPX World. All right. Well, that is going to do it for me today. I appreciate y'all hanging out and chatting. I haven't put it on the calendar yet, but I do think I'm going to try and do a lunch and learn tomorrow. I haven't decided on the topic. If you have an idea for the topic, let me know on Discord. I had a bunch listed down. Here we go. Blockchain, DAOs, OMA 3, UGC. You know what? UGC might be a good one. I actually might talk about user-generated content. So maybe that'll be tomorrow's topic. For our lunch and learn, which would be a Twitter space that would happen around noon Central Time. But definitely tomorrow night, I will be on the UPX podcast with my good buddy, Too Stupid to Win. We will talk all things Upland. And then we'll be back Friday at 5 p.m. Central right here at UPX World Live for the 11/11 Epic 5 update. So don't forget that. Also, speaking of 11/11, only a couple days left to submit your pieces for the array and the pyramid and your guild pieces. Don't sleep on it. If you haven't participated yet in 11/11, do it. Create a couple pieces of art. Get it started. Don't wait. Don't delay. You want to get in as soon as you can. And yeah, all right. That's going to do it for me today. Until next time, you guys take care. Stay frosty. I don't know. I think that's somebody's thing. Anyway, I'll see you around the ship. Cheers.